The primordial truth. Chaos is not just a mere adversary or faction within the galaxy. It is a fundamental, pervasive force woven into the very fabric of existence itself. To understand chaos, one must first grapple with the concept of the immaterium, a roiling alternate dimension of pure psychic energy. The warp is a place where time flows unpredictably, logic bends, and the very emotions of sentient beings manifest as tangible power beyond our physical understanding of both the property of physics and time and space as well. It is simultaneously a source of immense potential, but can also be the catalyst of ultimate destruction. Chaos arises from the warp's interplay with our material universe. The thoughts, emotions, and desires of every being ripple from the materium across the immaterium, giving rise to its ceaseless turbulence. The very existence of the warp is a paradox. Chaos exists because mortals exist, yet chaos also seeks to dominate and consume the very beings who sustain it. From this symbiotic relationship emerged the ruinous powers, the Chaos Gods. Khorne, Singed, Nurgle, and Slanesh embody the extremes of mortal emotions, the epitome of rage, ambition, despair, and excess. They are not creators in the traditional sense, but rather reflections or amplifications of mortal flaws and aspirations. Their very existence is a grim testament to the intrinsic corruption of sentient life. But chaos is not just confined to the warp, it bleeds into the material world, often through warp rifts or the minds of the corrupted. Planets consumed by chaos become hellscapes, twisted into mockeries of their former selves. Its very presence is insidious, as it requires no armies nor invasions to spread. All that is needed is but a whispered temptation, a moment of despair, or even a spark of ambition, which is more than enough to plant the seed for unlimited destruction. Yet despite chaos being a great and raw force of change and power, as well as both physically and spiritually corrupting, it is not in itself necessarily evil. While its adherents and servants act in ways that are often malevolent, some devotees of chaos are more dedicated to the service of freedom and change than of the pure selfishness that humanity and most other intelligent species define as malice. However, more often than not, the Chaos Gods reward individual accomplishment in such a way that the ends justify the means, and the absence of hierarchy and emphasis on individual freedom leads to the pursuit of excess and personal aggrandizement that can only be characterized as damnation, the physical and spiritual corruption of mind, body, and soul. In this way, chaos is not just a force of corruption, but rather a force of transformation. It challenges the very essence of reality, offering the potential for power, freedom, and transcendence at the cost of one's sanity and soul. For some, chaos is liberation. For most, it is annihilation. To fully grasp the terror of chaos, one must become familiar with the apogee of its manifestations, the ruinous powers also known as the Chaos Gods. These entities are the ultimate expressions of mortal emotions and psychic energy, given both form and consciousness within the warp. The Chaos Gods are not omnipotent in the strictest sense, yet their influence permeates the galaxy, both unrelenting and eternal. The Chaos Gods take their shapes of 4 individual entities: Khorne, the Blood God; Singed, the Changer of Ways; Nurgle, the Plague Father; and Slanesh, the Prince of Excess. Khorne is the Blood God, the Lord of War and Wrath. Where the warp screams, where steel clashes and flesh is torn, there Khorne listens. And when that sound is glorious, when it is made without hesitation, without remorse, without cowardice, he smiles. Khorne is the Chaos God of bloodshed, rage, and martial prowess. Yet he is not mindless slaughter, though he is often mistaken for it. He is the embodiment of war, wrath, and fury itself. He is the primal fury of a mortal defending his home, the disciplined violence of a duelist, the fury of a berserker loosing himself to the pulse of battle. Khorne is the embodiment of every expression of rage, every outpouring of aggression, and the moment where instinct triumphs over thought. His realm is an unending battlefield, a wasteland of brass and fire, where rivers of blood flow between mountains of skulls. Here, his demons clash in eternal battle, not for victory, but because to fight is to serve. And in the heart of this screaming eternity lie the blood pits, great gladiatorial arenas where Khorne tests the strongest of his chosen. Mortals, demons, traitor Astartes, even legendary figures such as Horus or mighty orcs who live for battle may find themselves summoned here, not to be judged, but to entertain. These are not courts of trial, these are altars of violence, where only the worthy remain standing when the dust and gore settle. Khorne's creed is brutally simple: blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. And his gifts reflect this clarity: physical might, martial mastery, endurance in the face of death. But these gifts are not free. For every drop of blood spilled in his name, every skull claimed in his service, frees a little more of his influence into the material world. Khorne despises the sorcerer, the schemer, the manipulator, the coward who kills from afar. Above all, Khorne values the honest strike, the face-to-face kill, the roar of the beast unleashed. In the galaxy, his presence is felt wherever rage overwhelms reason. Every act of vengeance, every blood feud, every moment of unrestrained violence empowers him. And when the galaxy is at war, when millions die by the sword, the bolt, or the axe, Khorne grows stronger. He is not a god of cruelty, he is the god of rage unchained, and in his domain, mercy is a weakness, and hesitation is death. Singed, changer of ways, the architect of fate, weaver of all things. If Khorne is the raw scream of war, then Singed is the whispered plan behind every scream, and the lie that made it happen. He is the chaos god of change, ambition, sorcery, and fate. He is the master of the great game behind all things, and nothing, not even the gods themselves, escapes his endless web of manipulation. To understand Singe is to understand Paradox, for he is both chaos and order, destruction and rebirth, lies that become truths, and truths that unravel into madness. His followers do not worship with chants or blood, but with plots and potential. They seek power, understanding, and above all, control. His realm within the warp is a shifting labyrinth, a dimension where logic fails and reason dissolves. Castles float upside down, rivers flow backward, thoughts become doors, and emotions become prisons. Here, even chaos demons find themselves questioning what is real. But at the center of this madness is a well, the well of eternity, where it is said that from this place all time and space was born. And it was here that Singed, in a moment of divine amusement and cruelty, cast one of his most cunning lords of change, Kairos Fateweaver, into its churning maelstrom. Kairos returned, yet was permanently changed, two-headed, hunchback, fractured across timelines. One of his heads saw only the past, the other only the future, and neither of them ever spoke the same truth. He had become a creature of impossibility, and in doing so, had become Singe's perfect mouthpiece. Singe offers power, but it is never free. His gifts come tangled in promises, bound in secrets. The more a mortal pulls on the thread of sorcery or ambition, the tighter the net becomes around them. Many rise, only to fall into madness. And yet, every act of invention, every rebellion against fate, every longing to change one's station in life feeds him. When a scientist dares to rewrite the rules, when a traitor turns against his oath, or when a sorcerer invokes a name they barely understand, they all serve Singed. But what does Singed really want? Even the other gods do not know. His plans have layers deeper than thought, intentions buried beneath centuries of misdirection. To follow Singe is to believe in nothing but possibility, and to be useful to Singe, even for a moment, is to play a part in a play whose script has already changed, and always will. Slaanesh, the Dark Prince, Lord of Excess and Perfection. Wherever there's indulgence, there is Slaanesh. Wherever someone reaches for more, whether that be beauty, pleasure, sensation, or perfection, they end up serving the Dark Prince. Born of the Aldaris decadence, Slaanesh is the youngest of the Chaos Gods, yet no less terrifying. They are the embodiment of desire without limit, of experience so pure it blurs the line between pleasure and agony. Slaanesh's palace lies at the center of a sixfold domain, each representing a different form of temptation: paramour, vainglory, excess, carnality, obsession, and regret. These domains lure pilgrims, both mortal and demons, into their endless roads, promising fulfillment and transcendence, yet each step brings the traveler closer to damnation. It is whispered that a lonely silver knight once ventured through them, resisting temptation after temptation, only to fall at the final threshold, not through lust, but through his pride in believing himself to be incorruptible. Whether he was a Grey Knight or a hero of another world, none can say. All that remains is his armor, now displayed as a trophy upon Slaanesh's throne. Yet, Slaanesh does not command like Khorne, nor scheme like Singed, nor smother like Nurgle. Slaanesh invites, offers, tempts. They whisper with the voice of a lover, gaze with the eyes of an idol, and smile with the cruelty of a god who knows that no one can resist them forever. And yet, not all who serve Slaanesh are slaves to carnality. Some seek perfection in other forms, some in art, some in skill, some in sensation. The blade master who refines a strike to inhuman beauty, the painter who bleeds for his canvas, the warrior who only lives for the high of combat, all draw closer to the Dark Prince of Chaos. Slaanesh represents the pursuit of meaning through indulgence, and the tragedy lies in the realization that the more you seek, the less you ever truly have. Nurgle, the grandfather of decay. In the Garden of Rot, where blossoms of flesh bloom with sores and pustules, there is laughter, deep, guttural, and filled with an ancient warmth. It is here, within the festering heart of corruption, that the most paradoxical of the Chaos Gods resides. Nurgle, the Lord of Decay, the bringer of plague, and to his followers, the Grandfather. Unlike the blind fury of Khorne or the ever-shifting ambition of Singed, Nurgle is constant. His domain is not driven by conflict, nor by betrayal, but by inevitability. Time itself is his ally. All things must decay. All structures will collapse. All flesh must fail. And that is not a question of if, it is only ever a question of when. But in that decay, in that collapse, Nurgle offers comfort. To the dying, he whispers acceptance. To the deceased, he promises resilience. To the suffering, he gives meaning. And to all who despair, he offers his embrace. Nurgle is rot, yes, but he is also rebirth, the corpse that feeds the soil, the infection that reshapes the world, the end that gives rise to something new. In his eyes, there is no tragedy in death, only transformation. But perhaps the most horrific aspect of Nurgle is this: he truly loves his followers. Where the other gods are cruel or indifferent, Nurgle is paternal. He cares in his own grotesque way. The plague bearers, the Nurglings, the mortals who cry out in agony, all are his children, and he cherishes them with a love that is as infectious as it is grotesque. His realm, though it festers of stinks and rot, is not cold and hateful. It is alive, teeming with plagues and decay that dance to the rhythm of his infectious joy. His cauldrons never stop boiling, stirring diseases not with malice, but with a twisted creativity. Each concoction is a gift, a symphony of suffering meant to spread the joy of change, the relief of surrender. But make no mistake, Nurgle's love is a prison. His embrace is one from which you cannot escape. Once the rot takes hold, once the body swells with corruption and the soul is twisted into joyous submission, there is no return. Those who bear his mark will laugh through cracked, rotting lips, even as they march into war, spreading his gift with every oozing wound. He is the god of entropy, of filth, of despair accepted and turned into devotion. And the more mortals suffer in the galaxy, through war, famine, plague, or fear, the more they unconsciously feed the Grandfather's garden. Every time someone accepts their fate, every moment of resigned sorrow, every whispered plea for relief from inevitable suffering, that is Nurgle's hymn, and it is sung across the stars. Though each Chaos God is distinct, they are all intertwined in a perpetual cycle of conflict and uneasy alliances. Khorne's martial fury clashes with Sentience's intricate scheming. Nurgle's acceptance of stasis opposes Sentience's endless change, and Slaanesh's pursuit of excess is an affront to Khorne's brutal simplicity. Yet despite their rivalries, the Ruinous Power are united in their hunger for domination over the material universe. They all share a singular purpose: to corrupt, dominate, and consume. Through the Chaos Gods, the warp becomes more than a dimension. It is the galaxy's reflection of itself, a mirror to its darkest truths. The Ruinous Powers are not external invaders, but intrinsic to existence itself, an eternal reminder that even gods are born from the flaws of mortals. To comprehend the essence of chaos, it is crucial that one first understands the concept of the warp, for it is both the origin and the battleground of the Ruinous Powers. The warp is a domain of formless energy and raw emotion, essentially an alternate dimension coexisting with the material realm. It is in the sea that the Chaos Gods swim, the very crucible of their power and the source of their infinite malice. The warp, also known as the Immaterium, is a realm that defies all human logic, a place where time and space becomes meaningless and thoughts and emotions take form. It is a mirror to the material galaxy, reflecting the fears, ambitions, and desires of all sentient beings. In its tempestuous depths, emotions are amplified into storms, and psychic energy fuels its relentless chaos. The warp is an immensely powerful conduit for psychic power, etheric energy that enables sorcery, divination, and a multitude of other supernatural feats. However, the channeling of such unrelenting power comes at a price, as the warp's raw energy is incomprehensibly volatile and dangerous, prone to corrupting anything it touches, putting anyone who dares to come into contact with it at lethal risk, or potentially a fate much worse than death. Yet besides destruction and ruin, the warp can also be used as a gateway for travel, due to its lack of limitations from time and space within its dimension. The Immaterium essentially functions like a sea, always moving in abstract currents, contracting and expanding. This allows knowledgeable users to bend and twist the currents of the warp for interstellar journeys by plotting a course through its unpredictable realm and following the streams from one end to another. A ship can undertake a journey that would take thousands of years in real space, while only taking weeks or even days within the warp, assuming of course that the vessel and its crew would survive the journey. For the process of navigating through the warp is immensely dangerous, requiring incomprehensible sophisticated knowledge and guidance. The tides and currents of the warp are treacherous and unstable, and can shift unpredictably, leading to ships being either swept off course within the warp, or even lost to the dimension entirely. Due to the treacherous influence of the very presence of the Immaterium, ships traveling through the warp also have to rely on Geller fields to shield their crews from the warp's predations, yet should even as much as a flicker in these defenses occur, it can expose the crew to the horrendous effects of the warp and spell immediate doom for the ship and its crew. Being a dimension constructed of raw emotion, the warp, unlike our dimension, is not a passive one. It is reactive, sensitive to the thoughts and emotions of those who touch it, growing darker and more chaotic as sentient beings across the galaxy feed it with their strife. It is the very wellspring from which chaos forces draw their might. Though its existence is a paradox, offering unimaginable power to those who dare wield it, it also corrupts and destroys them in the process. Individuals gifted and cursed with a direct connection to the warp are able to channel its volatile energies to bend reality to their will. These psychers are conduits of immense power, capable of feats that defy the natural order, moving objects with thought, incinerating enemies with raw psychic fire, or even allowing them to glimpse the fractured threads of fate itself. However, the utilization of this power comes at a terrible cost, for the warp is a realm of madness and hunger, and every psyker is a beacon that draws the gaze of the horrors lurking within closer. Without discipline, the psyker's own mind can become their undoing, as they are literally consumed by the uncontrolled energy, shattered by visions beyond mortal comprehension. For the stronger their connection to the warp becomes, the greater the risk of corruption, annihilation, or worse, possession becomes. To be a psyker, consorting with the dark arts themselves, is to walk the razor's edge between godhood and oblivion, a living duality of limitless potential and inevitable doom. for the warp's influence bleeds into the material realm through breaches in the physical space, allowing demons to manifest. These breaches, also known as incursions, often occur near sources of great psychic disturbance, things such as massacres, psychic rituals, psychic activity, sorcerous rituals, or warp storms. However, even the very act of a psyker briefly exposing themselves to the warp can be enough to draw the attention of demonic possession, which is one of the greatest dangers of interacting with the immaterium, as demons are always and constantly seeking a way into real space, and a psyker's soul is the perfect beacon that draws them in, like moths to a flame. The demons that potentially appear in an incursion or possessions often reflect the nature of the rift and the chaos god influencing it, as each chaos god commands a vast array of demonic entities, all of them ranging from minor mindless beings to unimaginable greater demons of cataclysmic and apocalyptic power. Once manifested, demons will wreak havoc on the material world. They may annihilate entire populations, corrupt entire ecosystems, or transform planets into nightmarish realms of chaos. The longer they remain in real space, the more they warp the environment to mirror the immaterium, creating landscapes of impossible geometry, rivers of blood, or forests of thriving flesh. Yet despite their incomprehensible potential for destruction, demons are intrinsically tied to the warp. Without a sustained warp energy, their forms begin to weaken and dissipate. This is why many demonic incursions focus on maintaining the warp rift by amplifying mortal suffering in the vicinity to prolong their existence in our dimension for as long as possible. The chaos demons thrive on extreme emotions, pain, fear, hatred, and despair. These emotions create psychic disturbances that strengthen the warp's influence, preventing the demons from losing their grip on reality. This is why chaos often targets planets with widespread war, oppression, or terror. Yet the demonic presence does not only have to be triggered through an individual being corrupted by the warp, nor does it have to be engaged by the presence of war, as in some cases, through its relentless volatility, the warp can simply on its own permanently overlap with the material realm, creating rifts where demonic forces can spill into our dimension. These areas become cursed, twisted by the unnatural energies of the immaterium. When demonic incursions occur, they are met with the full wrath of the Imperium. Space Marines, particularly the Grey Knights, are often deployed to cleanse the area, supported by the power of the Inquisition, the Adeptus Sororitas, and the Astra Militarum. Entire planets may even be subjected to exterminatus, the ultimate destruction of a planet should an infestation be deemed irredeemable, sacrificing millions or even billions to prevent the spread of chaos. Yet no matter how many incursions are repelled or how many worlds are cleansed, the warp's influence on our dimension from the other side remains eternal. Demons, undying and insidious, simply retreat to their realm, awaiting the next tear in reality to spill forth once again. As for the individual, the consequence of pursuing the warp and its secrets is the inevitable corruption of one's soul. Those who seek power from the warp will ultimately be marked by it. Their bodies mutate, their minds twist, and their souls become shackled to the chaos gods. Even those with noble intentions cannot escape the warp's insidious touch. The Chaos Gods prey on mortal emotions, exploiting the highs and the lows of the soul, whether through whispers of power, promises of salvation, or visions of despair, chaos offers what an individual mostly desires or fears. This corruption usually begins subtly with dreams, thoughts, and feelings that seem to come from within. Over time, the victim begins to believe these influences are their own, paving the way for full subjugation. It might be a noble seeking the power to protect their people during times of war who is tempted by the strength of corn. However, corn does not grant power without cost. His gifts could come with an insatiable bloodlust that would only grow stronger within the individual. Over time, the noble would lose control of himself and his anger, slowly becoming consumed by rage and slaughter. Through the continuous cycle of never-ending anger, despite his original good intentions, the noble ends up destroying the very people that he sought to protect. On the other hand, in despair, or in times of great suffering, Nurgle offers respite through the acceptance of decay. Those who turn to Nurgle do not do so in rage, but rather in resignation, surrendering their hopeless situation to his embrace, hoping to end their suffering. For in accepting Nurgle's gifts, they become his servants, their bodies destined to rot with disease, yet unable to die. Through this grateful devotion, their minds are slowly warped, twisted into worshipping the very thing that corrupted them. More importantly, and above all, the warp is a reflection of the mortal soul. The hatred, ambition, and despair of sentient beings is what fuels its chaos, giving rise to and sustaining the ruinous powers, as well as their demonic legions within the warp. It is the embodiment of cruel irony that the mortal races, in their endless wars and unrestrained desires, are the very architects of their own damnation. The manifestation of the warp is the reflection of the galaxy's true face, a raging storm of anguish, deceit, and ruin. It is the realm of infinite potential, where the greatest ambitions and darkest nightmares are made manifest, a place where both the greatest ambitions and the darkest nightmares are both created. But for those brave or foolish enough to seek to wield its power, the same question always remains: how much are you willing to sacrifice? It is crucial to understand that the presence of chaos does not merely invade the material realm in force, it rather seeps into the very fabric, corrupting worlds, minds, and institutions with a patient, insidious malevolence. While armies of demons and heretics wage war across the galaxy, truly, chaos's most devastating weapon lies in its ability to turn its enemies against themselves. Through whispers, visions, and dark pacts, chaos can corrupt even the purest souls, binding them to its will with promises that often become inescapable chains. The Chaos Gods are masters of exploiting mortal desires and flaws. They do not appear as monstrous horrors to those they seek to corrupt, at least, not at first. Instead, they each wear a different face, presenting themselves as saviors, offering solutions to personal, social, or even existential crises. Chaos does not discriminate against who it appeals to. It seduces both the high and the low, the weak and the strong, promising everything from physical power to spiritual enlightenment. This universality of temptation ensures that no faction, from the Imperium of Man to the Eldari Elder, is safe from its ever-encroaching grasp. This is also the essence of what makes chaos the ultimate enemy to any species capable of the slightest of emotions, as anyone on a planet continent, state, city, or hamlet is susceptible to the corruption of chaos. The temptation often begins subtle, a faint voice in a moment of doubt, a vision during prayer, or an unexplainable sense of longing for something unattainable. These subtle feelings are usually the first seeds planted by chaos. The change is slow, gradual, patient. The first compromises seem minute, almost justified. A decree bent to serve a greater purpose, a rule broken to achieve something greater, a power accepted in a moment of desperation. For the line between righteousness and corruption is not crossed in a single step. It is worn away in continuous strides until the soul has vanished, no longer recognizing that it has fallen. Yet the deeper one treads into chaos territory, the more the price becomes clear. Chaos is not a force that gives, it is a force that takes. What once felt like a gift becomes a chain that binds tighter with each invocation, each sacrifice, each moment spent basking in its false radiance. The power of chaos's corruption lies within its arsenal of psychological manipulation, the potential material rewards, and the lure of forbidden power. The corruption by chaos leaves tangible marks on its subject, both physical and spiritual. It is not uncommon to see mutations, where the exposure to warp energy often results in changes that reflect the patron chaos god's domain. For example, Sentience followers might develop extra limbs or eyes, representing his eternal obsession with change. Nurgle's servants become riddles with pustules, boils, and gain unnatural resilience, whilst Lanish's devotees might exude unnatural beauty or even grotesque exaggerations of their features. The corrupted also undergo drastic changes in personality, abandoning their previous values. An idealistic warrior might become a remorseful killer, while a Paris cleric could turn into a hedonistic tyrant. Yet what is most horrifying about chaos is that once an individual is corrupted, their soul is eternally bound to the warp. Even death does not free them from this chain, as their very essence is consumed or repurposed by their patron god. The most infamous and significant example of chaos's corruption in the galaxy's history took place in the 31st millennium, in the shape of the event which came to be known as the Horus Heresy. It all began when the War Master Horus, a primarch of the Emperor and the very first Imperial War Master, fell to the corrupting touch of chaos. Fueled by his ambition and manipulated by the chaos gods, Horus led half the Imperium's legions into rebellion, plunging the galaxy into 10,000 years of war. A war that still rages to this day. It was the Horus Heresy that birthed the traitors that came to be known as the Chaos Space Marines, a living testament to the corruption of loyalty and the devastating consequences of betrayal. They were the Emperor's most trusted warriors, clad in unyielding ceramite and driven by unshakable faith in humanity's future. They were the Adeptus Astartes, genetically enhanced super soldiers whose purpose was to bring unity to a fractured galaxy. Yet following in the shoes of Horus, they let their pride and ambition get the better of them and instead became the agents of its ruin. Under the banner of Horus, 9 of the 20 original Space Marine legions turned against the Emperor, renouncing their oaths and pledging themselves to the ruinous powers. These legions, now branded as the Traitor Legions, became the first Chaos Space Marines, their betrayal a permanent scar on the Imperium that has never healed. The creation of the Chaos Space Marine is a terrifying glimpse into the darkest depths of humanity's potential for hubris, violence, and despair. When an Astartes fall from grace, they will fall further than any other mortal. A lifetime of dedication to self-deprivation and selflessness is simply thrown aside as the Space Marine indulges his newfound independence in both thought and deed to its fullest extent. Freed from the sworn constraints of discipline, traditions, and the responsibilities that define the Adeptus Astartes, a Chaos Space Marine can exercise his every whim, whether it be for bloodshed, mayhem, sensual pleasures long denied, ambition, love, or simply vengeance. Each of the traitor legions has their own story, their own reasons for embracing chaos. The World Eaters, driven by their bloodlust, fell to corn, their once noble purpose twisted into an insatiable craving for slaughter. The Thousand Sons, desperate to preserve their knowledge and existence, were ensnared by Thinch, their quest for enlightenment leading them to eternal damnation. The Death Guard, betrayed by their own Primarch Mortarion, succumbed to Nurgle, their flesh and souls rotting as they became agents of pestilence. The Emperor's children, seduced by the allure of perfection, gave themselves wholly to Slanesh, their every desire magnified into unrelenting excess. Others, like the Black Legion, led by the ascended Abaddon the Despoiler, served no single god, but chaos undivided, wielding their devotion as a weapon to unite the fractured forces of the warp. Yet the transformation from Space Marine to Chaos Space Marine is as horrific as it is irreversible. In their devotion to chaos, these warriors have become grotesque abominations of their former selves. Their bodies, once paragons of genetic perfection, have been corrupted by the warp, twisted into monstrous forms through either boils, bones, or scales. Their minds, once focused on duty and loyalty, are consumed by madness, their thoughts saturated with hatred for the Imperium and its Emperor. Chaos Space Marines wield weapons and technology that mirror their corruption. Their armor, still reminiscent of the ceramite plate they once wore, is warped and fused with demonic flesh, each plate pulsating with unnatural life. Their bolters, chainswords, and plasma weapons are infused with the power of the warp, making them instruments of both physical and spiritual destruction. But despite their corruption, Chaos Space Marines are not mindless slaves to the warp. They retain the strategic brilliance and martial discipline they possessed as loyal Astartes, but now wield these skills with a far more ruthless and malevolent purpose. Their raids against the Imperium are not mere acts of vengeance. They are carefully orchestrated campaigns designed to destabilize the galaxy, weaken the Emperor's domain, and finally claim the worlds for the Dark Gods. Each battle they fight is but a small, significant move in the larger, unending war between Chaos and the Imperium of Man. The Space Marines of Chaos are the ultimate embodiment of the warp's influence, a living reminder that no matter how noble the intent, the allure of power and freedom can corrupt even the most steadfast of souls. They are both traitors and monsters to the cause of the Imperium, but they are also victims of their own ambition and the cruel manipulations of the ruinous powers. On the battlefield, they are the embodiment of the Imperium's darkest fears made manifest, a harrowing vision of what humanity can become, should it succumb to its basest instincts. The corruption and temptation of chaos underlines the eternal struggle between free will and external manipulation. It is the reflection of the moral and existential dilemmas faced by all sentient beings in the galaxy. For, in the end, the path to chaos is not forced, it is chosen, albeit often unknowingly. It is this grim reality that makes the battle against chaos not just a war of armies, but a war for the very souls of the galaxy. It is the reason for the implementations of doctrines, rules, and laws, as the potential for corruption festers in the hearts of all mortals, ready to spread insidiously across society and the galaxy like an unrelenting plague of the soul. It is within this domain of temptation and corruption where chaos cults and mortal worshippers, those who willingly embrace the ruinous powers, weaves the touch of chaos into the fabric of societies. Chaos cults are the lifeblood of the ruinous powers within the material galaxy. These secretive organizations vary widely in purpose and size, from small conspiratorial cells to sprawling underground movements that span entire planetary systems. Yet what unites them all is the same devotion to the gods of chaos, though the nature of their devotion often reflects the desires and the weaknesses of their members. Some cults are born out of desperation, peasants or factory workers seeking to escape grinding oppression, only to find themselves now bound to far darker masters. Other cults arise from ambition, as nobles and powerful figures knowingly trade their souls for promises of influence, wealth, or immortality. These groups often begin innocuously, their true allegiances hidden beneath layers of subterfuge. A workers' union demanding better conditions may seem righteous until its rallies for change suddenly turn to blood-soaked rituals. An eccentric artistic movement may create breathtaking works, but whispers of orgiastic revelry and inhuman patrons suddenly reveal a much darker truth beneath the creative art. It is here the Inquisition, the ever-vigilant eye of the Imperium, scours the endless societies among the stars for such expressions of heresy. Yet for every cult they destroy, another one rises in its ashes. If the Chaos Space Marines are the front line of the ruinous powers, then the Chaos cults are their spies. Their influence erodes the Imperium from within, undermining its foundations long before an open attack. These cults sabotage infrastructure, assassinate key officials, and even incite open rebellion, softening societies in advance for planetary invasion. Yet not all mortals are mere pawns of chaos. Some rise to positions of considerable power within its hierarchy. Sorcerers, warlords, and prophets of chaos are mortals who have earned the favor of the dark gods, their bodies and soul irreparably altered by their devotion. These individuals command armies of cultists and demons, acting as intermediaries between the material realm and the warp. Their schemes and machinations are labyrinthine as they seek to further the agendas of their patrons while simultaneously pursuing their own twisted ambitions. The corruption of mortals by chaos represents an existential threat to the Imperium because it strikes at the heart of humanity's greatest vulnerability, its own imperfections. Chaos does not impose itself upon the unwillingly. It whispers, tempts, and coaxes until its victim listens and willingly embraces their damnation. This insidious nature makes chaos cults the ultimate weapon against the Imperium, for they can thrive in its shadows, feeding on the discontent and weaknesses of its people. To combat the spread of chaos, the Imperium employs the most of draconian measures. Planetary purges, inquisitorial witch hunts, and mass executions are often the only means of rooting out a cult. Yet these efforts are akin to lopping off a hydra's head, temporary and futile unless the deeper causes of corruption are addressed. This grim cycle of rebellion, repression, and ruin perpetuates the endless struggle against the ruinous powers, a conflict that the Imperium can truly never escape. But while the cultists and mortal agents of chaos serve as the vanguard of the corruption, spreading the influence of the warp across the galaxy, they are but the first ripple in a massive wave that comes in the shape of the warp. The rise of a cult often coincides with demonic incursions, as warp energy seeping into reality empowers the cultists, and ultimately, when the veil between realities weaken, the demons of chaos manifest. They are the horrifying culmination of the ruinous power's will, able to reshape the material realm of our dimension into a nightmarish echo of the immaterium. Demons are not flesh and blood, but rather embodiments of chaos itself, forged from the raw psychic energy of the warp. Each demon is a fragment and living image of its patron god essence, a manifestation of both their power and purpose. To witness a demon of chaos is to stare into the heart of madness, for their forms are as mutable as they are grotesque, and their motives almost incomprehensible to mortal minds. Demons take many shapes, each reflecting the nature of the god that spawned them. Khorne's demons are creatures of destruction, blood-red monstrosities wielding axes and swords, reveling in the carnage that they unleash. Ferocious, relentless, they charge headlong into battle, their fury an unstoppable tide. Nurgle's demons, by contrast, are bloated and pestilent, their decayed forms brimming with foul diseases. They spread contagion with every step, turning battlefields into putrid swamps of filth and despair. Sentience demons are living embodiments of change, their forms shifting and twisting in constant flux. These creatures wield devastating sorcery, their spells unraveling the minds of their foes or reshaping reality itself. Slaanesha's demons are both beautiful and repulsive, exuding an allure that is impossible to resist. Their alive forms move with unnatural grace, and their mere presence overwhelms the senses, drawing mortals into an abyss of excess and torment. When demons manifest in the material realm, it is always with devastating consequence. Their presence is heralded by disturbances in reality, events such as unnatural storms, maddening whispers, and incomprehensible phenomena that all defy the laws of physics. For demons to appear, the warp must bleed into reality, often through rituals performed by cultists, or through the psychic resonance of mass death and suffering. These occurrences are simply known as incursions. The scale of these events varies drastically. Some are brief, with a single demon tearing through the veil to enact a moment of carnage before being banished back to the warp. Others are apocalyptic, with entire armies of demons spilling forth, transforming an entire world into hellscapes. Such incursions can only be halted by the intervention of the Imperium's mightiest forces. The Astartes, the Inquisition, and even the Grey Knights are all the tip of the spear whose sole purpose is to combat the demon threat. Yet despite their immense power, demons are ephemeral in the material realm. Their existence here is unnatural, temporarily sustained by the energies of the warp. Without a continuous anchor or lifeline, be it a warp rift, a corrupted artifact, or the psychic resonance of their followers, the demons begin to fade, their forms unraveling as they are drawn back into the immaterium, a vulnerability which is one of the few advantages that humanity has in their endless war against chaos. Yet while a banishment of a demon might offer temporary respite, the mere destruction of a demon is no true victory. For the essence of these beings is eternal, and their banishment to the warp is only temporary. There, in the endless void of energy, they are reformed, their hatred for the material realm undiminished. It is a grim truth that the Imperium's victories against chaos are fleeting, for the ruinous powers are as inexhaustible as they are insidious. Demons are not merely weapons of chaos, they are its utmost direct expression. They are the raw, unfiltered will of the gods, the essence of a battle not just of flesh and blood, but of the clash of faith, willpower, and sanity itself. The two are bound in a perpetual, never-ending cycle, for as long as mortals gives in to greed, ambition, aspiration, and anger, then the warp will exist, feeding on the mortals, whispering to them its promises, bringing about the never-ending incursions of demons who will continue to stalk the galaxy, bringing ruin to all who dare stand against them. As the demons of chaos are the unrestrained manifestations of the warp's malevolence, they bring vast devastation wherever they tread. Yet the ruinous powers extend their influence further than merely bending of blood and bone, as they often merge these demonic essence with machinery to create the dreaded Daemon Engines, war constructs that epitomize the fusion of flesh, metal, and the warp. Seen essentially as the antithesis to the machine spirit revered by the Adeptus Mechanicus, Daemon Engines of Chaos are horrific war machines, each housing a bound entity of the warp trapped within a mechanical chassis. This fusion grants them both the durability of machinery as well as the malevolent sentience of their demonic counterpart. The process of creating such an engine involves dark rituals performed by the warpsmiths of the Dark Mechanicum who entrap the essence of a demon inside a piece of machinery. Yet unlike a demonic incursion, where a demon freely, by their own will, manifests in real space before inevitably being banished back to the warp, a demon bound by the rituals of the Dark Mechanicum is trapped within the machine against its will. The process is the culmination of true cruel irony. For while all demons long to infest the material universe permanently, those imprisoned within Daemon Engines find this wish to be twisted into incomprehensible torment. The demons have become anchored in real space, yet they have been stripped of their autonomy, enslaved to the warpsmiths, chaos lords, or sorcerers who wield them as mere instruments of destruction. Many Daemon Engines howl not in exultation, but in endless, seething agony, their rage of confinement fueling their murderous rampages. This imprisonment also comes at a terrible cost to the demon itself, for bound within this cage of iron and ceramide, it loses much of its connection to the warp, and unlike its unshackled kin, it cannot retreat to the immaterium should it be slain. If a Daemon Engine is destroyed, the fate of its inhabitant is grim, for while some are annihilated entirely, their essence obliterated along with their mechanical shell, others are sent back howling to the warp, weakened and disgraced. Yet in the most wretched of cases, the demon does not die at all, but instead remains trapped within the wreckage, lingering in a never-ending limbo of pain and suffering until it is reforged and repurposed into yet another machine of war. On the battlefield, Daemon Engines are both feared and revered by the Chaos Forces. To their allies, they are the manifestation of the ruinous powers' unbridled might, the very symbols of their dark faith made tangible in steel and malice. Their presence inspires awe and dread in equal, both among chaos cultists and warriors who view them as sacred instruments of the god's will. Yet the fear they instill is not limited to their enemies, as even the most devout followers of chaos tread carefully around these unpredictable creations. For as it turns out, the bound demons within are prone to bouts of insubordination, their malevolence sometimes turning on allies as much as foes. Those who serve alongside the Daemon Engines do so with a mixture of reverence and caution, knowing that their wrath is indiscriminate and their hunger for destruction insatiable. Yet despite its natural inclination to harness and consume every living being, the forces of chaos do not only clash with the inhabitants of the material world, for within the orb itself exists a term known only as the Great Game. It is an eternal conflict, an endless war, fought not in the material realm, but in the roiling, nightmarish depths of the orb itself. It is a battle not for survival, but for supremacy, waged between the Chaos Gods who vie for dominance, their very existence driven by the fundamental contradictions of each of their respective natures. Though all are united under the banner of chaos, the four gods are far from allies. They act more like rivals, each consumed by their domain and locked in an unending struggle that mirrors the galaxy's perpetual descent into disorder. Khorne, the god of blood and war, loathes the cunning machinations of Tzeentch, the architect of fate. The raw, unrelenting fury of Khorne, who values strength and honor through combat, is diametrically opposed to the labyrinthine scheme of Tzeentch, whose manipulation of destiny and reality itself twists every confrontation into an intricate game. Their clashes reverberate across the orb, each victory for one god reshaping the landscape of their dominions. On another front of this eternal war, Nurgle, the Plague Father, stands as the immovable embodiment of both despair and inevitability, his realm a festering garden of decay and corruption. He wages his own contest with Slaanesh, the Prince of Excess, whose intoxicating whispers drive mortals to endless indulgence and ambition. Where Nurgle offers the grim solace of accepting one's fate, Slaanesh tempts with the promise of limitless experience and transcendence. Their conflict, like that of Khorne and Tzeentch, is both philosophical and tangible, fought not only in their realms, but in the hearts and souls of mortals across the galaxy. The orb itself is the stage for this unceasing drama. Each Chaos God rules a vast domain, a surreal reflection of their essence. Khorne's brass citadel stands amidst an infinite battlefield soaked in the blood of millennia of war. Tzeentch's crystal labyrinth defies comprehension, its pathways shifting and reconfiguring with each passing thought. Nurgle's garden teems with vile fecundity, its grotesque beauty both repellent and oddly inviting. Slaanesh's palace of pleasure radiates an alluring decadence, where every sense is overwhelmed in rapturous agony and ecstasy. The borders of these realms are in constant flux, bleeding into one another as the gods wage war, transforming the landscapes in accordance with the victories and defeats. This eternal strife spills into the material galaxy, where mortal lives are but fleeting pieces in the gods' grand designs. Cults, warbands, and civilizations rise and fall, unwittingly advancing the agendas of their chosen deities. A cornered warband might march against Tzeentchian sorcerers, believing their hatred of sorcery to be righteous, never realizing that they are but pawns in a far greater game. The Chaos Gods do not unite even in their common purpose, as their rivalry ensures that every mortal campaign carries within it the seeds of betrayal and self-destruction. The Great Game has no end, for the Chaos Gods cannot truly destroy one another, as their power is inexorably tied to the emotions of sentient beings. As long as the mortals wage war, Khorne will reign. As long as ambition and deceit persist, Tzeentch will thrive. Despair ensures Nurgle's dominion, and desire fuels Slanesh's insatiable hunger. The balance of power shifts endlessly, a reflection of the galaxy's ever-changing tides of suffering, ambition, and decay. For mortals, the Great Game is a source of unrelenting misery. Civilizations crumble, warlords rise and fall, and even those who resist chaos often find themselves ensnared by its influence. The gods' rivalry ensures that their followers are doomed to endless conflict, their victories fleeting, their sacrifices meaningless in the grand scheme of the warp's never-ending conflict. This is the true horror of the Great Game, for it is an eternal war that feeds on the despair and dreams of the galaxy, a never-ending cycle of destruction that neither the mortals nor the gods can escape. It is chaos at its purest, an unending spiral of conflict that consumes all, leaving nothing but madness and ruin in its wake. As the forces of chaos spread their influence throughout the galaxy, they are drawn inexorably towards the Eye of Terror, an immense rift in space, a wound in the fabric of reality itself, a place where both our world and the Immaterium exists at the same time. It is a place where the very laws of the universe break down, where time and space bend and warp under the gaze of the Chaos Gods. It is also the largest concentration of chaos forces within the entirety of the galaxy, making the Eye of Terror no mere corner of our existence, but a massive wound that bleeds the warp into our plane of reality on its own, a wound that thrives on the decay of our reality. The creation of the Eye of Terror was the result of the fall of the Eldari roughly 11,000 years ago, when their depravity finally culminated in the decimation of their race, drawing the spirits of billions of Eldari into the warp to be consumed by its excess. The worst destruction occurred at the heart of their galaxy-spanning empire, where the warp erupted into real space. An area of almost 20,000 light-years across exploded in a massive psychic shockwave that not only ruptured the fabric of reality itself, spilling the warp into our galaxy, but also gave birth to the youngest of the Chaos Gods, Slaanesh. Within this chaos, the demonic entities of the Chaos Gods grow ever more powerful, their influence and presence within the galaxy spreading like a sickness. For the Eye of Terror is not just a location in the galaxy, it is a physical testament to the power of the Chaos Gods, and acts as a beacon for all who seeks the promises of the warp. The Eye of Terror and its counterparts within our galaxy are not just the homes of the Chaos Gods, they are the very epicenters of a cancer eating our universe, part of the sickness of chaos that spills forth, twisting and bending minds, warping our realm through the eternal pull of chaos, a force that knows no boundaries and will stop at nothing to consume everything in its path. It is here, from the churning depths of the Eye of Terror and the myriad of chaotic realms scattered across the galaxy, that the forces of chaos can extend their malignant tendrils into the mortal universe. Yet this ever-expanding tide of corruption, while potent and seemingly inexorable, has never gone unchallenged. Across millennia, entire civilizations have risen to stand against chaos, their defiance forged through faith, reason, or desperation. These factions are not mere opponents, they are the galaxy's last defense against the Chaos Gods and their ruinous powers, ever so determined to struggle against a foe that seems to thrive on destruction and subversion. The very essence of chaos is intertwined with its adversaries, for without their existence, chaos would not exist at all, and without their opposition, the darkness would simply consume all. Every action of the ruinous powers invites resistance, and every incursion into the material realm is met with defiance from those who understand the true stakes. Yet the fight is far from even, for chaos, despite all its inherent discord, is ultimately united in its desire to unmake the universe, while its enemies are scattered, disparate factions whose goals either conflict or weaken their combined resistance. Foremost among the opponents of chaos is the Imperium of Man. Stalwart, unyielding, the Imperium's devotion to the Emperor of mankind forms the cornerstone of their defiance. The Emperor, though long entombed upon the Golden Throne, is venerated as a god by his followers. His light, the Astronomicon, serves as a beacon to guide humanity through the warp, standing as a bulwark against the encroaching madness. To the Imperium, chaos represents the ultimate heresy, a violation of the Emperor's sacred vision of humanity. The Imperium's institutions, the Inquisition, the Adeptus Astartes, the Ecclesiarchy, are unrelenting in their war against the ruinous powers. The Adeptus Astartes, the genetically enhanced Space Marines, lead the charge, wielding boulders and chainsaws against the demonic horrors. The Sisters of Battle, clad in both faith and armor, burn the heretics with purifying flame, while the Inquisition operates in the shadows, rooting out corruption with ruthless efficiency, erasing entire worlds if necessary to stem the tides of chaos. Yet for all its might, the Imperium's resistance is fragile, stretched across an endless amount of armed conflicts across the galaxy, burning precious resources at an unprecedented rate, while the Imperium itself is plagued by corruption, bureaucracy, and the very fanaticism that sustains its seal. Within the soil of the Imperium, the seeds of chaos find fertile ground, even within the Imperium's ranks, a grim reminder of just how close humanity teeters on the brink of oblivion. The ancient and enigmatic Eldar, a race whose history is inexorably tied to the birth of the Chaos God Slaanesh, also stand in the fight against chaos. Their survival is a testament to cunning and desperation. For the Eldar, chaos is both a nemesis and a haunting specter of their own hubris. For Slaanesh, born from their excess, hungers eternally for their souls, forcing them to tread carefully between survival and annihilation. The craft-willed Eldar rely on their immense psychic prowess and the protective souls trapped within their spirit stones to shield them from the warp's predations. Meanwhile, the Harlequins of the Laughing God and the militaristic forces of the Inari, led by Yvraine, strive to harness the power of the recently awakened god Innate, hoping to reshape the balance of power against the forces of chaos. Even the orcs, brutish and seemingly simple-minded, are adversary to chaos as well, albeit unintentionally. Their rampant love for violence and destruction often places them at odds with Chaos Incursions, though their motivations are far from noble. Orcs fight for the sheer joy of battle, caring little for the grand designs of the warp, yet their resistance, chaotic in its own way, has thwarted countless chaos plots, if only because the orcs would rather fight the demons than ally with them. The Necrons, ancient and calculating, possess a unique enmity for chaos. These metallic warriors seek to rid the galaxy of all life to restore their former dominion, yet their hatred of the warp stems from its unpredictability and its corrupting touch to their galaxy. The Necron Pharaons, such as Imhotep the Stormlord and Tracyn the Infinite, are devoted to deploying their unyielding legions against the Chaos forces whenever their tomb worlds are threatened. Yet more critically, And what makes the Necron's ancient technologies a true threat against the Chaos forces are the existence of inventions such as the Blackstone fortresses, which can dampen or even sever the connection between the warp and the material realm, making the Necrons a thorn in the side of the ruinous powers, and potentially one of the only factions with the ability to eliminate chaos from our realm. The Tau Empire, a rising force in the galaxy, often finds itself outmatched by chaos. Lacking psychers and possessing very little understanding of the warp, the Tau are particularly vulnerable to its corrupting influence, and despite their advanced technology and belief in the greater good, their ignorance has left them prey to Chaos's manipulations. Still, the Tau fight with unwavering determination, striving to protect their empire from forces they scarcely comprehend. Then there are the Tyranids. To the servants of Chaos, the hive mind is not a beast. It is not a hunger. It is a silence, where the mortals burn bright with ambition, fear, love, and hate, emotions that the realm of Chaos treat like a banquet. The Tyranids bring only absence. Their minds are void. Their souls are not veiled, but missing. They do not dream. They do not aspire. They do not pray. And they do not feel. To Khorne, they are unworthy of wrath. To Singed, they are a puzzle that cannot be shaped. To Nurgle, they carry no suffering. And to Slaanesh, they are incapable of temptation. The warp recoils from them. Planets devoured by the great devourer fall silent in the warp. No echoes, no pain, only stillness. To the gods of chaos, the Tyranids are not a threat to their dominion in the conventional sense. They are something far worse, as they are the end of meaning made manifest. Prophecy is an insidious instrument of chaos, for it offers both hope and despair. Across the galaxy, seers, psychers, and prophets alike glimpse fragments of the future, glimpses granted by the warp itself. These visions are rarely clear or benevolent, for they are tainted by the chaotic nature of the immaterium itself. Some see visions of ruin, planets burning under the gaze of the chaos gods. Others glimpse salvation, the faint glimmer of hope against the endless night. But whether these portents come as warnings or promises, they all serve the designs of chaos in an infinite number of ways that mortals can scarcely comprehend. Prophecies tied to chaos are often double-edged, laden with as much deceit as truth. They guide mortals towards their doom, promising power or salvation, while binding them ever closer to the will of the Chaos Gods. Within the ranks of chaos, prophecy is a tool of manipulation and control. The most gifted psychers and sorcerers, such as the Thousand Sons, peer into the warp to divine the future. These individuals often rise to positions of great power, wielding their visions to sway entire legions and mortal armies. Take for instance the Chaos Sorcerers of Singed, whose mastery of divination and manipulation makes them among the most dangerous agents of the ruinous powers. Their prophecies are riddles wrapped in enigmas designed to lead both allies and enemies into carefully orchestrated traps. The allure of their foresight is undeniable, yet it is a leash, pulling all who rely on it closer to the service of the changer of ways. But even those not tied to chaos find their lives shaped by prophecy as well. Imperial saints, orc war bosses, and even the silent Necron dynasties have acted on visions of the future, yet those who delve too deeply into such mysteries often find themselves ensnared by chaos, For the warp's visions are rarely offered for free, adding yet another layer to the warp's intrinsic connection with the real world. Yet prophecy does not simply predict events, it shapes them. Chaos revels in the manipulation of fate, ensuring that even the act of resisting its will can lead to ruin. It is a twisted irony that many who fight against chaos find themselves fulfilling the very destinies that they sought to avoid. One of the galaxy's greatest tragedies began with a prophetic warning to the Emperor. His attempt to shield humanity from the influence of the warp only tightened its grip on his favorite sons. For chaos, fate is not linear, it is rather a labyrinth, and all mortals are its unwitting wanderers. Every choice, every battle, every sacrifice becomes yet another thread in a web spun by the Chaos Gods. The galaxy's greatest heroes and villains alike are all pawns in this grand game, their lives guided by forces they can scarcely comprehend. And yet prophecy is not solely the dominion of chaos. The Emperor of Mankind himself is said to have been guided by visions of humanity's future, shaping his great crusade to unite the stars. The Eldar as well rely on the guidance of their Farseers to avoid annihilation, while even the Orcs, in their crude simplicity, believe in the inevitability of their destiny as the galaxy's ultimate conquerors. But in the end, all prophecy is tainted by chaos, for the warp is the very essence and underpins all psychic phenomena. The future is not a fixed path, but rather a battlefield where every vision is a potential weapon. To peer into the future is to invite madness, for the very act of knowing one's fate often ensures its realization. In the grand theater of galactic conflict, prophecy and fate serve as both tools and traps. Chaos thrives on the uncertainty they create, turning hope into despair and defiance into self-fulfilling doom. As the destiny of the galaxy verges on the brink of annihilation, one can't help but wonder, can the future be changed? Or is the galaxy's fate already written in the warp, weaved into the stars as an eternal testament to the dominion of chaos? The answer lies not in the visions of the prophets, but rather in the hearts of those who dare to defy them. The origins of chaos are a tale as old as the galaxy itself, but much of its true nature remains hidden in obscurity, a fragmented narrative shaped by myths, half-truths, and ancient lore. Among scholars, psychers, and even the chaos worshippers themselves, a multitude of questions arise. Where did the chaos gods come from? Were they always the malevolent entities they are now? Or were they born from something greater, and perhaps even more terrible? One theory, whispered among the Imperium's most heretical inquisitors, posits that the Chaos God were not always beings of pure malice. In this view, they are a byproduct of mortal thought, reflections of the emotions and desires of intelligent life. As civilizations rose and fell, their collective fears, lusts, ambitions, and sorrows coalesced into the warp, shaping the embryonic forms of the Chaos Gods. Should this be true, then all mortals themselves bear the responsibility for their existence, which is a chilling thought that few dare to consider. Others speculate that chaos is not a creation of mortals at all, but a primordial force, predating the birth of stars and galaxies. In this point of view, the warp has always existed as a chaotic mirror to reality, a roiling tempest of formless energy and potential. In this view, the Chaos Gods then are eternal, as much a part of reality and existence as both gravity and time. This perspective casts them not as aberrations, but as natural forces, terrifying, implacable, and intrinsic to the universe itself. Yet interestingly, the Imperium is not the first civilization to grapple with chaos, nor will it be the last. Ancient ruins and forgotten tomes tell of empires lost to the warp long before humanity's rise. Similarly, the Eldar, who in their arrogance gave birth to Slaanesh, committed an act that shattered their very empire and reshaped the galaxy. But what of the civilizations that came before even the Eldar? Were there other species who danced too close to the flames of chaos? Their names simply erased from history by the all-consuming tides of the warp. Among the most persistent myths and tales are that of the Old Ones, an ancient and mysterious race said to have wielded unmatched mastery over the warp. According to legend, the Old Ones sought to control the warp, bending it to their will to create and sustain life across the galaxy. But if the myths are true, their experiments unleashed forces beyond their control, sowing the very seeds of chaos that would one day consume all they had built. There are also rumors of artifacts, relics of unimaginable power that lie hidden across the stars. Some believe these to be weapons forged by the Old Ones to combat chaos, while others claim that they are keys to unlocking the warp's secrets. The truth of these artifacts remain unknown, but their existence offers a tantalizing glimpse into the long and tangled history of Chaos's influence. A particularly chilling theory suggests that the Chaos Gods are not individual entities at all, but rather aspects of a single greater force, a primordial chaos that exists beyond the comprehension of even its avatars. If this is true, then the Great Game is not a conflict, but a mechanism, a means by which this greater chaos maintains its grip on reality. Such a revelation would cast all of existence in a new and terrifying light, reducing even the Chaos Gods to mere pawns in an incomprehensibly large and complicated game of push and pull. Yet among these countless myths and speculations swirling around chaos, none are as tantalizing or as perilous as those that touch upon the Emperor of mankind himself. For millennia, the Emperor has been venerated as humanity's ultimate protector, a being of unparalleled power and wisdom who stands as the last bulwark against the forces of the warp. Yet, whispers persist, hushed and dangerous, that the Emperor's relationship with chaos is far more complex than the faithful would ever dare to admit. It is known that the Emperor, during the Great Crusade, warned his sons, the Primarchs, of the perils of the warp. Yet this warning was not born of ignorance, for it is said that the Emperor's knowledge of chaos is unmatched, a deep and intimate understanding gained through direct confrontation with the ruinous powers. How, then, did the master of mankind acquire such knowledge? Even the mention of such a question, or merely a suggestion towards it, would be considered immense heresy within the Imperium, as most argue that the Emperor's understanding of chaos comes from his centuries spent combating it. Yet there are others who whisper darker truths in the shadows. One theory, heretical in the extreme, suggests that the Emperor once sought to harness the power of chaos itself. As the most powerful psyker that humanity has ever produced, the Emperor may have delved into the warp, seeking to bend its energies to his will in his quest to unite humanity and banish all ignorance. If true, this could explain his unmatched understanding of the warp's dangers, yet it also raises the question of whether the Emperor himself has been touched by chaos. Did he emerge unscathed from his encounters with the warp, or did he carry some shadow of its influence back with him into the material realm? The most persistent and damning myth revolves around the Emperor's creation of the Primarchs. The process by which these demigods were forged remains shrouded in mystery, but many believe that the Emperor drew upon the energies of the warp to imbue his sons with their extraordinary abilities. If this is true, then the Primarchs were not born only of the Emperor's genius, but also of chaos itself, a truth that would cast their eventual rebellion into a tragic and ironic light. Even the Emperor's ascension to the Golden Throne is not free of suspicion. To some, his eternal vigil is the ultimate act of defiance against chaos, a testament to his unyielding will, but to others, it is a grim reminder of the warp's insidious power. The Golden Throne, designed to sustain the Emperor's shattered body, is also a psychic conduit, a bridge between the material world and the warp. Does the Emperor's presence on the throne serve as a beacon of light in the darkness? Or does it tether him to the very forces that he sought to destroy? All of these questions are dangerous to ask even in the Imperium's darkest corners. To suggest that the Emperor, humanity's greatest hope, may have been tainted by chaos is an act of heresy punishable by death. And yet, the doubt lingers, whispered in secret by those who have glimpsed the true scope of the warp's influence. Perhaps this is indeed chaos's greatest victory, not the corruption of planets or the destruction of armies, but the very seed of doubt that it has planted in the hearts of those who resist it. The Emperor's connection to chaos is, like so much about the warp, a riddle without a clear answer. Whether he is humanity's savior or its unwitting pawn, the truth remains obscured, hidden in the shadowy recesses of myth and speculation. What cannot be denied, however, is that the Emperor's war against chaos is far from over, and that the fate of the galaxy rests on the razor's edge of that conflict. The galaxy trembles under the shadow of chaos, a perpetual storm of malice and ambition that seeks to engulf all existence. From the depths of the warp to the farthest reaches of the void, the influence of the ruinous powers seep into every corner of reality, twisting and corrupting everything it touches. For the Imperium of Man, the Age of Chaos is not an era, but a state of existence. The Great Rift has cleaved the galaxy in two, a wound that bleeds raw warp energy across the stars. Worlds lie abandoned or consumed, their inhabitants either dead or damned. Even the mighty bastions of humanity falter under this onslaught, their defenses strained to the breaking point. The Astronomicon flickers like a dying ember, and the Emperor's light struggles to pierce the darkness. In this age, no sanctuary exists. Every stronghold is a battlefield, and every soul is a price. Chaos is no mere enemy to be defeated, as it is an eternal force embedded in the very fabric of our existence. The ruinous powers thrive on humanity's fears, ambitions, and flaws, twisting the mortal soul into grotesque mockeries of its former self. Across the stars, chaos cults rise like blighted weeds, sowing rebellion and discord. These traitorous worshippers, blinded by promises of power and immortality, attempt to dismantle the Imperium from within, their machinations as deadly as any external foe. Yet even within the armies of chaos, unity is an illusion. The great game, waged by the Chaos Gods, reverberates through their mortal and demonic followers, turning them against one another in their endless feuds of war and betrayal. However, this unity is its own weapon, a chaotic tide that wears down the disciplined forces of the galaxy. For the legions of chaos need not to march in perfect order. They need only to tear apart the structures that oppose them, leaving nothing but ruin in their wake. Still, despite the grimness of this reality, chaos is not invincible. The galaxy's defenders, fractured and desperate, still fight with unyielding resolve. Yet the cost of resistance is staggering. Every victory against chaos is paid for in blood and souls, and the Imperium teeters on the brink of its collapse. Its heroes rise to meet the challenge, only to be shattered under the weight of their sacrifice. For every demon banished, another one emerges. For every cult eradicated, two more arise. The forces of chaos are inexhaustible, drawn from the endless wellspring of the warp itself. The question remains, can the galaxy truly withstand the onslaught of chaos? Or is the eventual triumph of the ruinous power inevitable? The answers lie obscured in the swirling madness of the warp, where prophecy and fate intertwine in a dance of malice and despair. The galaxy in chaos is a galaxy poised on the edge of oblivion, a place where every action, every choice, holds the power to tip the scales towards salvation, or ultimately, annihilation. Hey there, Hazmat here. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and despite it being one of the biggest videos I've ever done, I know that all of this just about scratches the surface of chaos, but you can be certain that I already have about 100 other things just within the chaos aspect that I want to dive into immediately. So don't worry, we'll get there eventually. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to let me know in the comments below. As always, a big thanks goes out to the Hunters Lounge, specifically the exclusive Johnny Sevens, the exclusive Warmog, the exclusive Geechee Boy, and the exclusive Rat. The VIPs, Corvo Bearslayer, Derivative, Tuck Powell, Gino Lucero, Goose, Hambone, Jim and El Bob, Corey Peterson, Michael Thornhill, Mort Def Menace, Ryan, Slip, Stas Piestek, Sunrise Phoenix, TJ Crane, Texas Toast, and the Wizard of Copper. And of course, all the regulars. If you enjoy the content I produce and would like to help support the channel, consider signing up as a member on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. The link is in the description below. And thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.